We've already talked about the Marshallian demand of the consumer, the indirect utility function, the expenditure minimization, and how to maximize utility. In this video, we'll be talking about the goods themselves. And in economics, there are actually two main types of goods. The first is normal goods, and the second is inferior goods. And so the definition of normal goods is that as income increases or as your budget increases, then the consumption or the Marshallian demand for the good should also increase. Whereas for inferior goods, when income increases, the Marshallian demand for that good, should decrease. And this makes sense because when something is inferior, you would always want to replace it with something better, which is why the demand for the inferior good decreases as income increases. To mathematically show this, we simply have to find the change in the Marshallian demand for the good with respect to the budget. So what this gives us is partial derivative of x sub I star with respect to m. And this tells us how the demand for good I changes as your budget or as the consumer's budget changes. And if this is less than 0, then it means that your consumption of good I decreases as your income increases or your budget increases. So if this is less than 0, then good I is an inferior good. On the other hand, when the partial derivative of x sub I star with respect to m is greater than or equal to 0, then good I is a normal good. Is normal. Now, there are actually two types of normal goods. And the first type of normal good are called luxury goods. And the second type of normal goods are necessities. And I know this sounds very familiar from elementary and high school, but in microeconomics, we do have a slightly different definition for these terms. And to know if a good is a necessity or a luxury, we simply have to look at the percent change in consumption with respect to a percent change in the budget. The percent change in quantity demand or the Marshallian demand is simply the change in our Marshallian demand, which is x sub I star, over x sub I star. And this would be divided by the change in our income or our budget over m. And we could actually simplify this. And what we'll get is the change in x sub I star over the change in m multiplied by m over x sub I star. And this is what we call our income elasticity of demand. And this is actually denoted by E, which stands for elasticity, x sub I, comma, m. There are many other elasticities that can be tackled in microeconomics. However, in this video, we'll be strictly talking about the income elasticity of demand since we want to know whether a good is a normal good, an inferior good, a luxury good, or a necessity. So now that we have defined what the elasticity is, we can now actually find or determine if a good is a luxury good or a necessity. So if a good is a luxury, then EXI M should be greater than 1. What this means is that the percent change in the Marshallian demand is actually greater than the percent change in income. On the other hand, when E, xi, m is less than or equal to 1 and greater than or equal to 0, then this good is a necessity. In microeconomics, we want our calculations to be as precise as possible. So in elasticities, instead of using the triangle delta, we actually use the partial derivative delta to show or to indicate that we are measuring small changes rather than large changes. To add to that, if you saw this a while ago, the elasticity is simply multiplying the change or the partial derivative. Let us say that these are actually partial derivatives instead of deltas or triangle deltas. In reality, this term here is actually the same as these terms here. And so, what we can say is that when the elasticity, the income elasticity of demand is greater than 0 or is positive, then the good is a normal good. But when the income elasticity of demand is negative, then the good is inferior. Because when this term right here, becomes negative, then the elasticity will also automatically become negative.